The stars in the empty space near the edge of the solar system suddenly began to shimmer and bend. The darkness twisted like water being stirred by an invisible hand. Then, with a flash of bright blue light, something massive appeared where nothing had been before. It was not one ship. It was many ships, hundreds of them. The alien vessels hung in the cold vacuum like giant crystals made of ice and metal. Each ship was beautiful in its own terrible way. Their hulls gleamed with a pale, ghostly light that seemed to come from within the metal itself. Strange symbols covered their surfaces, glowing with colors that human eyes had never seen before. Admiral Vextar stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the largest vessel in the fleet. His body was tall and thin, covered in smooth gray skin that reflected the light from the control panels around him. 4 arms moved with quick, precise motions as he worked the ship's controls. His head was long and narrow, with large black eyes that saw everything. When he was pleased, his mouth parts would click together in a sound that other species had learned to fear. The Admiral looked at the small yellow star ahead of them. Around it, several planets moved in their slow dance through space. The third planet from the star was the one he wanted. His scouts had been watching it for many cycles, listening to the strange radio signals that came from its surface. "Humans," he said, and his mouth parts clicked with amusement. Such a young species, such a primitive world. His second-in-command, Commander Zithka, moved closer. She was smaller than the Admiral, but just as deadly. Her weapons training was legendary throughout the Zephyrian fleet. "Admiral, our sensors show no orbital defenses around their planet," she reported. "No energy shields, no military space stations. Their technology appears to be very basic." Vextar's eyes grew bright with excitement. This was going to be easier than he had hoped. In the past 50 years, his fleet had conquered 17 different worlds. Each time, they had faced desperate resistance from species that knew they were about to lose everything. The battles had been long and difficult. Many Zephyrian warriors had died. But this time would be different. The humans seemed to have no idea what was coming. "How many ships do they have in space?" the Admiral asked. "Very few, sir. We detect some small vessels moving between their planet and their moon. Nothing that could threaten even our smallest fighter craft." The Admiral walked to the great window at the front of his bridge. Through it, he could see the other ships of his fleet spread out like a deadly cloud in space. Each ship contained hundreds of warriors. Each warrior was trained from birth to fight and conquer. The Zephyrian Empire had spread across the galaxy by taking what they wanted from weaker species. "Their radio signals show they fight among themselves constantly," Commander Zithka continued. "They seem to spend most of their time making war on their own kind. They have not learned to unite against outside threats." This made the Admiral even more pleased. Divided enemies were always easier to defeat. The humans would probably surrender quickly once they realized how hopeless their situation was. Then they could be put to work in the Empire's mines and factories. The strong ones might even be trained as soldiers for future conquests. "Begin the approach," Vextar ordered. "But slowly. I want them to see us coming. I want them to understand what is about to happen to their world." The great fleet began to move forward. Each ship was powered by engines that bent space itself, allowing them to travel faster than light. But now they moved at normal speed, like hunters stalking prey. As they flew deeper into the solar system, the fleet's sensors gathered more information about the humans and their planet. The species lived on only one world, with no colonies on other planets. Their population was large but scattered across the surface in thousands of separate groups. They had many different languages and seemed to disagree about almost everything. "Perfect," thought the Admiral. "They will be too busy fighting each other to organize any real defense." The human ships they detected were small and slow. Most seemed to be used for carrying supplies or conducting simple research. None appeared to be built for war. The largest human vessel they found was a space station that orbited their planet. It was tiny compared to even the smallest Zephyrian warship. "Admiral," called out the communications officer. "We are receiving signals from the human space station. They seem to be trying to contact us." "Ignore them for now," Vextar replied. "Let them wonder what we are. Let them fear what we might do. Fear makes the conquest easier." But privately, the Admiral was curious about what the humans might say. Would they beg for mercy? Would they try to offer him gifts in exchange for their lives? Most species did one or the other when they first encountered the Zephyrian fleet. The fleet continued its slow approach. They passed the outer planets, large gas giants with many moons. The Admiral's sensors detected no hidden bases or defensive platforms. The humans really seemed to have no military presence in space at all. Such confidence, Commander Zithka observed. Or such ignorance. They must believe they are alone in the universe. "Both will serve our purposes," the Admiral replied. As they flew closer to the human planet, the fleet's appearance began to change. Weapon ports opened along the sides of each ship. Energy began to build in the plasma cannons that could melt mountains. The ships spread out into attack formation, ready to rain destruction on any target the Admiral chose. The humans were still sending radio signals, but now the transmissions seemed more urgent. The Admiral could imagine the panic spreading across their world as they realized they were facing something far beyond their ability to fight. "Sir," the communications officer said again, "the signals are becoming stronger. They appear to be coming from many different locations on the planet's surface." "Military bases?" asked Commander Zithka. "Unknown, sir. The technology is too primitive for our sensors to determine much detail." The Admiral decided it was time to end the suspense. He had played with his prey long enough. Now it was time to make his demands and watch the humans realize how hopeless their situation truly was. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "Let us introduce ourselves to these humans." The main screen flickered to life, showing the image of a human. The creature was smaller than a Zephyrian, with only 2 arms and strange hair growing from the top of its head. It wore some kind of uniform and sat in what appeared to be a command center. The human spoke first, its voice carried across space by radio waves. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the International Space Station. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Admiral Vextar stepped forward so the human could see him clearly. He made sure his weapons and the deadly appearance of his ship were visible in the background. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire," he announced, his voice strong and commanding. "Your species is now under our control. You have one choice to make. Surrender immediately and become servants of the Empire, or be destroyed. You have 10 of your time periods called minutes to decide." The human captain stared at him for a long moment. The Admiral expected to see fear, or maybe desperate attempts to negotiate. Instead, the human's face showed something he did not expect. Determination. "Negative," Captain Chen replied calmly. "Earth stands." Admiral Vextar's mouth parts, clicked with surprise, and then with dark amusement. These humans were braver than he had expected, but bravery without power was just another form of foolishness. "So be it," he said, and cut the communication. The conquest of Earth was about to begin. Captain Sarah Chen sat in the command center of the International Space Station, looking at the blank screen where the alien admiral had been just moments before. Around her, the station's crew worked at their controls with calm, practiced movements. No one seemed surprised by what had just happened. "All stations, this is Captain Chen," she said into her microphone. "Condition red. The package is confirmed hostile. Repeat, the package is confirmed hostile." Across the Earth and throughout the solar system, those words triggered responses that had been planned for decades. In hidden bunkers buried deep underground, massive computers came to life. In control rooms that did not appear on any public map, men and women in military uniforms began pressing buttons and turning keys. The alien admiral had made one very important mistake. He thought the humans were primitive and divided. He was. Wrong on both counts. Dr. James Morrison sat in a facility buried 3 miles beneath the mountains of Colorado. As the director of the Solar Defense Network, he had spent the last 20 years preparing for this exact moment. The message from Captain Chen appeared on his screen, along with data from sensors that the aliens did not know existed. 312 enemy vessels, reported his aide, Colonel Martinez. Size range from 200 meters to over 3 kilometers. Energy readings are off the charts. Any sign they've detected our assets? Dr. Morrison asked. Negative, sir. They're still moving slowly toward Earth. Their sensors seem to be focused on the planet and our civilian installations. Dr. Morrison nodded. The aliens were making the same mistake that many enemies had made before them. They were looking at what humans wanted them to see, not at what was really there. The truth was that humanity had been preparing for first contact since the 1960s. Not the peaceful kind that scientists talked about in public, but the other kind. The kind where visitors from space came not as friends, but as conquerors. The first hints had come from radio telescopes that detected patterns in space that should not exist. Signals that seemed artificial, but came from sources too far away to be human. Then came the discovery of faster-than-light travel, hidden in equations, that most scientists thought were just theoretical. But some humans had understood what those discoveries really meant. If humanity could figure out how to travel faster than light, then other species probably could too. And if they were more advanced than humans, they might not come in peace. Status report on all defense platforms, Dr. Morrison ordered. Platforms 1 through 47 are online and ready, Colonel Martinez replied. Power levels at maximum. Targeting computers are locked onto the enemy fleet. The alien admiral would have been shocked to learn what those defense platforms really were. To his sensors, they looked like ordinary satellites, the kind that primitive species used for communication and weather monitoring. In reality, they were weapons that could destroy planets. Each platform contained a magnetic railgun that could fire tungsten rods at nearly the speed of light. The aliens' energy shields, designed to stop plasma weapons and laser beams, would be useless against chunks of metal moving that fast. Sir, Colonel Martinez said, we're getting reports from the hidden bases. Those bases were another secret that the aliens knew nothing about. Over the past 50 years, humans had built military installations inside asteroids throughout the solar system. From the outside, they looked like natural rocks floating in space. Inside, they contained missile systems, fighter craft, and some weapons that even Dr. Morrison did not fully understand. Asteroid Base 7 reports ready, Martinez continued. Stealth fighters are armed and waiting for launch orders. Base 12 has all missile tubes loaded. Base 23 says their new experimental weapon is charged and ready for testing. Dr. Morrison smiled grimly. The aliens thought they were attacking a primitive world with no defenses. Instead, they were about to face a military network that had been built specifically to destroy exactly this kind of threat. On the space station, Captain Chen watched the alien fleet continue its approach. She knew that every human military leader on Earth was watching the same display. In the Pentagon, in the Kremlin, in military headquarters around the world, generals and admirals were coordinating humanity's response. Captain, said Lieutenant Williams, her communications officer, we're receiving a priority message from General Harrison at Earth Defense Command. The screen flickered, showing the weathered face of a 4-star general. Behind him, Chen could see the main command center where representatives from every major military on Earth worked together. Captain Chen, this is General Harrison. You are now the official spokesperson for the human race. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, remember that you represent all of us. Understood, sir, Chen replied. Any change in our rules of engagement? Negative. The rules remain the same as always. If they shoot first, we respond with overwhelming force. Make sure they understand that we gave them a chance. The rules of engagement had been debated and refined for decades. Humans would not start a war with alien visitors, but they would finish one if forced to. The idea was simple. Any species aggressive enough to attack without provocation was too dangerous to be allowed to survive. "Sir," Lieutenant Williams called out, "the alien fleet is changing formation. They're spreading out into what looks like an attack pattern." Chen nodded. She had expected this. The Admiral had given them 10 minutes to surrender, and about 8 minutes had passed. Soon, the aliens would realize that no surrender was coming. "All stations," she announced, "prepare for incoming transmission from the enemy fleet." The HFY screen activated again, showing Admiral Vextar. This time, his expression was different. The amusement was gone, replaced by cold anger. "Humans," he said, his voice carrying across space, "your time has ended. Since you choose to resist, you will be destroyed. Your planet will be burned clean, and your species will be erased from the galaxy. This is your final warning." Captain Chen looked directly into the alien's large black eyes. "Admiral Vexitar," she said calmly, "you are making a mistake. Withdraw your fleet now and no harm will come to you. This is your final warning." The alien admiral's mouth parts clicked rapidly, a sound that his crew recognized as extreme anger. "You dare to threaten me? You with your tiny ships and primitive weapons? I will enjoy watching your world burn." "Admiral," Chen said, her voice still calm and steady, "you are about to attack a sovereign world without provocation. We have the right to defend ourselves. If you open fire, we will consider it an act of war and respond accordingly." "War!" The Admiral's laughter was a horrible sound. "What war could you possibly fight against the Zephyrian Empire? Your entire species could not destroy a single one of our ships." Chen leaned forward slightly. "Admiral, I'm going to tell you something important. My species has been fighting wars for over 10,000 years. We've fought with sticks and stones, with swords and arrows, with gunpowder and bullets, with tanks, and airplanes with nuclear weapons and guided missiles. We've never stopped fighting, and we've gotten very, very good at it." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We've been waiting for someone like you for a long time. We've been preparing. We've been practicing. And now you're here, about to give us the one thing we've always been best at, a war to fight." The alien admiral stared at her for a long moment. Then his expression changed to one of contempt. "Enough of this foolishness," he said. "Destroy them all." The communication ended. Captain Chen turned to her crew. "All stations, this is Captain Chen. The aliens have declared their intent to destroy Earth. As of this moment, we are at war. Weapons free. Repeat, weapons free." Throughout the solar system, the hidden defenses of humanity came to life. The real battle was about to begin. The first shots of the war came from the alien fleet. Admiral Vexitar's flagship fired a massive beam of superheated plasma toward Earth. The energy weapon was powerful enough to boil away oceans and melt continents. It had destroyed cities on 17 different worlds. The beam never reached its target. Exactly 2.3 seconds after the aliens opened fire, something impossible happened. The satellites that had been floating peacefully around Earth suddenly revealed their true nature. What the aliens had thought were simple communication devices were actually weapons platforms, and they began firing back. Tungsten rods, each, one the size of a telephone pole, shot out from the hidden railguns at tremendous speed. They moved so fast that they seemed to appear instantly beside the alien ships. The rods hit with the force of nuclear weapons, but without the radiation or the flash of light. They just punched straight through. The first alien ship to die was a medium-sized cruiser on the left side of their formation. One moment it was there, weapons charging for a second shot at Earth. The next moment, there was a hole clean through its center, and the ship was breaking apart as atmosphere and crew were sucked out into space. Admiral Vextar stared in shock as 12 more of his ships simply ceased to exist. The tungsten rods moved too fast for his sensors to track properly. His crew could only watch as their ships were destroyed by weapons they couldn't even see coming. "Shields!" he shouted. "Raise all shields!" But the Zephyrian shields were designed to stop energy weapons like lasers and plasma beams. They were useless against solid objects moving at such incredible speeds. The tungsten rods passed through the energy barriers as if they weren't even there. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. There are weapons platforms everywhere." That was when the asteroids began to move. What Admiral Vextar had dismissed as simple space rocks suddenly revealed themselves to be military bases. Hidden doors opened in their rocky surfaces, and missiles began pouring out. Hundreds of them, then thousands. Each missile was guided by computers that could calculate the movement of targets across millions of miles of space. Each one carried enough explosive power to crack open a mountainside, and they were all aimed at the Zephyrian fleet. "Evasive maneuvers," the Admiral ordered. "All ships, evasive maneuvers." But his fleet had been designed for attacking planets, not for fighting this kind of mobile warfare. The ships were large and powerful, but they were also slow to change direction. The human missiles were small and fast, and they seemed to anticipate every move the aliens made. The first wave of missiles hit the alien formation like a swarm of angry wasps. Explosions bloomed throughout the fleet as ships tried desperately to shoot down the incoming weapons. Some succeeded, but there were too many missiles and not enough time. A Zephyrian destroyer vanished in a ball of fire. A troop transport broke in half, spilling soldiers into the vacuum of space. The aliens' return fire was devastating, but it was aimed at empty space where the missile platforms had been just moments before. The humans, it seemed, understood something about warfare that the Zephyrians had never learned. Always keep moving and never be where your enemy expects you to be. "Sir," Commander Zithka reported, her voice tight with worry, "we've lost 47 ships in the first 3 minutes. At this rate, the entire fleet will be destroyed within the hour." Admiral Vextar couldn't believe what he was seeing. His sensors showed that the humans had turned the entire solar system into a weapon. Every asteroid, every satellite, every piece of space debris that he had ignored was now revealing itself to be part of a massive defense network. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They're primitives. They should have no weapons that could threaten us." "Admiral," his science officer called out, "I'm reading the composition of those projectiles. They're not using exotic materials or advanced energy systems. It's just metal rods moving at extremely high velocity." The Admiral's mouth parts clicked in disbelief. The humans had taken the simplest possible weapon, a chunk of metal, and found a way to make it devastatingly effective. It was brutal in its simplicity and terrifying in its efficiency. But what made it even worse was the way the humans fought. There was no panic, no desperate charging into battle, no heroic last stands. Instead, there was a cold, calculated precision that made his trained warriors look like amateurs. Every human attack was perfectly coordinated. When the railguns fired, the missiles would be launched to hit targets trying to evade the rods. When alien ships turned to avoid the missiles, they would fly directly into the path of another rail gun. It was as if the humans could predict exactly what his fleet would do and had prepared responses for every possible action. "Sir!" the communications officer shouted. "We're receiving a transmission from the human space station." The screen showed Captain Chen again, but now her calm expression had been replaced by something harder and more dangerous. "Admiral Vextar," she said, "you have 30 seconds to order your fleet to withdraw beyond the orbit of Pluto. If you do not comply, we will destroy every ship in your fleet." The Admiral's anger flared. "You think you can threaten me? I have over 200 ships remaining. Your tiny defense network cannot stand against the full might of the Zephyrian Empire." "Admiral," Chen replied, "you haven't seen our full might yet." That was when the stealth fighters attacked. They came out of the dark spaces between the planets, invisible to Zephyrian sensors until they were almost close enough to touch. The alien fleet's instruments had been designed to detect large objects like ships and space stations. They couldn't see small, fast fighters that had been built specifically to avoid detection. The human fighters were like nothing Admiral Vextar had ever encountered. They moved through space like living things, dodging between the larger alien ships and striking at weak points in their armor. Each fighter carried weapons that could punch through the hulls of ships 100 times their size. But it wasn't just their weapons that made them deadly. It was the way they fought. The human pilots flew their ships as if they had been born in space. They used the alien fleet's own size against them, hiding behind destroyed ships and using the debris as cover. When the aliens tried to target them, the fighters would slip away into the shadow of a larger vessel, only to appear somewhere else, entirely. "They're using our own ships against us," Commander Zithka observed with something that might have been admiration. "They're turning our formation into a maze that only they can navigate." The Admiral watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically torn apart. The humans weren't just defeating them. They were destroying them with an efficiency that spoke of years of planning and preparation. "Sir," his science officer reported, "I'm detecting something else. There are energy readings from the outer system that don't match anything in our database." "What kind of energy readings?" "Unknown, sir. But they're building towards something. Something big." Admiral Vextar realized that he had made a terrible mistake. These humans weren't primitive at all. They were predators, and they had been waiting for prey like his fleet to arrive. "All ships," he ordered, "begin withdrawal to safe distance. We need to regroup and—" His words were cut off as another wave of missiles struck the fleet. This time. They came from 6 different directions at once, making it impossible for his ships to defend against all of them. More alien vessels died in fire and twisted metal. The humans, Admiral Vextar realized, were not just defending their world, they were hunting his fleet, and they were very good at it. The retreat began, but the Admiral wondered if any of his ships would survive long enough to escape. Admiral Vextar's order to retreat came too late. The human defenders had anticipated this moment and were ready for it. As the surviving Zephyrian ships tried to turn away from Earth and flee toward the outer system, they discovered that the humans had one more surprise waiting for them. The retreat route was blocked. Hidden bases that had remained silent during the first part of the battle now revealed themselves. Massive installations built inside the largest asteroids opened up like mechanical flowers, exposing weapons that the Admiral had never seen before. These weren't railguns or missile launchers. These were something new and terrifying. "Sir," his science officer called out, his voice shaking, "those energy readings I detected earlier, they're coming from those installations. I think they're some kind of particle beam weapons." The first human superweapon fired a stream of accelerated particles that moved at nearly the speed of light. The beam cut through 3 Zephyrian ships in a single shot, slicing them cleanly in half. The edges of the cuts glowed white-hot where the weapon had passed through armor that was supposed to be indestructible. "How many of those things do they have?" Commander Zithka demanded. The answer came in the form of 6 more beams firing simultaneously from different directions. 12 more alien ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized by weapons that turned matter into energy. Admiral Vextar realized that his fleet was trapped. The humans had surrounded them with weapons platforms, and every direction led to more destruction. But what made it even worse was the way the humans coordinated their attacks. There was no confusion, no wasted shots, no friendly fire incidents. Every weapon fired at exactly the right moment to achieve maximum damage. It was as if the entire human defense network was controlled by a single mind that could see everything and plan perfectly. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving tactical data from our remaining ships. The humans appear to be using some kind of quantum communication network. Their response time is essentially instantaneous across the entire system." That explained how they could coordinate attacks across millions of miles of space with such precision. But it also meant that the humans had technology that the Zephyrian Empire had only theorized about. These primitives were using communication systems that his own scientists couldn't build. "All ships," the Admiral ordered, "focus fire on the largest human installation. If we can destroy their command center, we might be able to disrupt their coordination." It was a desperate plan, but it was the only chance they had. The remaining Zephyrian ships turned their weapons on a massive asteroid base that seemed to be directing many of the attacks. Plasma beams and energy cannons fired together, concentrating enough firepower to destroy a moon. The human base's shields flared to life, absorbing the incoming energy. For a moment, Admiral Vextar thought they might have found a weakness. Then the base fired back. The return shot was devastating. A beam of pure energy, larger than any the aliens had fired, struck the center of the Zephyrian formation. 5 ships vanished instantly, and the ones around them were damaged by the explosion. "Their shields are stronger than ours," Commander Zithka observed, "and their weapons are more powerful. How is this possible?" The Admiral didn't have an answer. Everything he had been told about humans was wrong. They weren't primitive. They weren't divided, and they certainly weren't helpless. "Sir," the tactical officer shouted, "we have incoming fighters from multiple vectors. They're everywhere." The human stealth fighters had multiplied. What had started as a few dozen craft had somehow become hundreds. They swarmed around the alien fleet like angry insects, striking at weak points and vanishing before the aliens could respond. But these weren't the same fighters that had attacked before. These were larger, more heavily armed, and they moved with even greater coordination. Each one seemed to know exactly where every other fighter was, and they worked together like parts of a single organism. "They're not just attacking randomly," Commander Zithka realized. "They're targeting our life support systems, our communications arrays, our navigation equipment. They're trying to disable us, not just destroy us." She was right. The human fighters were striking with surgical precision, cutting away the alien fleet's ability to fight back without necessarily killing the crews. It was a level of tactical sophistication that spoke of a military tradition far older and more refined than anything the Zephyrians had developed. "Admiral," the science officer reported, "I'm detecting something else. There are ships moving toward us from the outer system. Large ships. I think it's a human fleet." Admiral Vextar's hearts sank. If the humans had been holding back their main fleet during the battle, then everything his forces had faced so far was just the opening move. The real attack was still coming. "How many ships?" he asked. "Difficult to determine, sir. They're using some kind of stealth technology that interferes with our sensors. But based on the gravitational distortions, at least 100 vessels, possibly more." The Admiral looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were the finest warriors in the Zephyrian Empire, veterans of dozens of conquests. But now they looked scared and confused. They had never faced an enemy like this before. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving another transmission from the human captain." Captain Chen appeared on the screen again. Behind her, Admiral Vextar could see displays showing the positions of all the ships in both fleets. The human had been watching the entire battle, seeing every move his forces made. "Admiral Vextar," she said, "you now have less than 90 ships remaining out of your original 312. Your fleet is surrounded, outgunned, and cut off from escape. I'm offering you one final chance to surrender." "Surrender?" The Admiral's mouth parts clicked rapidly. "The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender." "Then you will die here," Chen replied simply. "All of you. Is your pride worth the lives of your remaining crews?" The Admiral looked at his tactical display. She was right about the numbers. His fleet had been reduced to scattered groups of damaged ships, surrounded by human weapons platforms and harassed by fighters they couldn't catch or kill. What? What are your terms? He asked, hating himself for the question. Unconditional surrender, Chen replied. You will power down your weapons and surrender your ships. Your crews will be treated according to the laws of war, but your vessels will be confiscated as reparations for your unprovoked attack on Earth. It was a total defeat. The greatest fleet in Zephyrian history, reduced to begging for mercy from a species they had intended to enslave. And if I refuse? The Admiral asked. Captain Chen's expression didn't change. Then in approximately 4 minutes, our main fleet will arrive and finish what you started. You've seen what our defensive systems can do. Our attack fleet is considerably more powerful. Admiral Vextar closed his eyes. In his mind, he could see the faces of the thousands of warriors under his command. They had followed him across the galaxy, trusting in his leadership. Now their lives depended on a decision that would destroy his career and his honor. But they would live. He began, then stopped. The words were the hardest he had ever spoken. I accept your terms. The bridge fell silent. Commander Zithka stared at him in shock. The weapons officers looked as if they couldn't believe what they had heard. Attention all ships, the Admiral said into his communicator. This is Admiral Vextar. Stand down all weapons. Prepare for surrender protocols. Captain Chen nodded. You've made the right choice, Admiral. Your crews will be treated with respect. As the human fighters pulled back and the weapons platforms powered down, Admiral Vextar realized that he had just witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that was supposed to be primitive had not only defeated the mightiest fleet in known space, but had done it in less than 15 minutes. The humans, he understood now, were not the prey. They were the predators, and they had just announced themselves to the galaxy. 3 months after the battle, Admiral Vextar sat in a small room aboard a human space station. The room was comfortable but clearly a prison cell. Through the single window, he could see his flagship being slowly taken apart by human engineers, who were studying every piece of Zephyrian technology. The humans had kept their word about treating prisoners according to their laws of war. The Zephyrian crews were housed in clean facilities, given adequate food, and allowed to communicate with each other. But they were also thoroughly isolated from the galaxy at large, cut off from any chance of rescue or escape. Captain Chen entered the room carrying 2 cups of a hot liquid that the humans called coffee. She offered one to the Admiral, who took it carefully. Over the past months, these daily conversations had become routine. Your government has finally responded to our messages, Chen said, sitting down across from him. Admiral Vextar looked up with interest. What did they say? They claim that your attack on Earth was unauthorized. They say you acted without orders from the Imperial High Command, and they disavow all responsibility for your actions. The Admiral's mouth parts clicked bitterly. Of course they do. They're saving face while abandoning their own warriors. It's what politicians do when military operations fail. Chen nodded. We suspected as much. But it doesn't matter. We recorded everything that happened, including your communications before the attack. The galaxy will know who fired first. Over the past 3 months, the humans had been very busy. They had sent copies of the battle recordings to every major government in known space. The footage showed clearly that the Zephyrian fleet had approached Earth with hostile intent, demanded surrender, and opened fire when their demands were refused. The galactic response had been swift and dramatic. Species that had been conquered by the Zephyrian Empire saw the recordings as proof that the mighty Zephyrians could be defeated. Rebellions had broken out on a dozen worlds. The Empire's carefully maintained image of invincibility was shattered. Your people are quite clever, the Admiral admitted. They could have simply destroyed my fleet and been done with it. Instead, they chose to humiliate the Empire in front of the entire galaxy. It's much more effective than simple destruction. We prefer to avoid unnecessary killing when possible, Chen replied. But we also believe in making sure that aggressors understand the consequences of their actions. The Admiral took a sip of his coffee. The bitter taste had grown on him over the months. What will happen to my crews? That depends on your government. We've offered to exchange prisoners for formal recognition of Earth's sovereignty and a treaty guaranteeing that no Zephyrian forces will enter the Sol system again. So far, your leaders haven't responded to that offer. This didn't surprise the Admiral. The Empire's pride had been wounded, and wounded pride often led to poor decisions. They're probably planning another attack, a larger fleet with more advanced weapons. Captain Chen smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. We hope they do. The Admiral stared at her. You want them to attack again? Admiral, let me show you something. Chen activated a wall display that showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of Zephyrian worlds and fleets. Blue dots showed human positions. There were a lot more blue dots than there had been 3 months ago. We've been very busy since your attack, Chen explained. We've made contact with dozens of species that have been oppressed by your empire. We've shared technology with them. We've helped them organize resistance movements. We've built new bases throughout the galaxy. The Admiral studied the map with growing alarm. The humans hadn't just defended their world. They had used the victory as a launching point for something much larger. You're building an alliance, he realized. We're building a coalition of free worlds, Chen corrected. Species that are tired of being bullied by empires like yours. And we're teaching them how to fight back. The Admiral thought about the battle he had witnessed. The precision, the coordination, the ruthless efficiency of the human defense. If they were sharing that knowledge with other species. Your empire has made a lot of enemies over the centuries, Chen continued. We're simply giving those enemies the tools they need to defend themselves and the confidence to use them. This could lead to a galactic war, the Admiral warned. It could, Chen agreed. But it won't be the kind of war your empire is used to fighting. You're accustomed to attacking primitive worlds that can't fight back effectively. This time, you'll be facing enemies who know how to hurt you. The display changed, showing recent intelligence reports. Zephyrian outposts had been attacked by unknown forces using human weapons and tactics. Supply convoys had been ambushed by fighters that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The Empire's expansion had not just stopped, it was being pushed back. The other great powers in the galaxy are watching all of this very carefully, Chen said. They're seeing that the Zephyrian Empire can be defeated. Some of them are starting to think about old grievances of their own. Admiral Vextar understood the implications. The Empire had maintained its position through fear and the belief that they were unbeatable. Now that myth was destroyed. Other powers that had submitted to Zephyrian dominance out of necessity might decide that submission was no longer required. You've started something that you might not be able to control, he warned. Perhaps, Chen agreed. But we didn't start this war. Your empire did when it decided that conquest and slavery were acceptable ways to expand. We're simply finishing what you began. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the implications of everything he had learned. Finally, he asked the question that had been troubling him for months. Why are you telling me all of this? Why share your plans with a prisoner? Captain Chen stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the remains of the Zephyrian flagship. Because, Admiral, you're going home. What? We're releasing you. You and a small crew to operate a single ship. You're going to return to the Zephyrian Empire and deliver a message from Earth. The Admiral couldn't hide his surprise. What message? Chen turned back to face him. That Earth and its allies are willing to coexist peacefully with any species that respects our sovereignty, but we will not tolerate aggression, conquest, or slavery. Any empire that practices these things will face the same fate as your fleet. They won't listen, the Admiral said. The High Command will see this as weakness. They'll assume you're afraid of a real war. Then they'll be making the same mistake you made, Chen replied. They'll be underestimating humans. And the species we've taught to fight like humans. She walked toward the door, then paused. Admiral, let me give you some advice. When you get home, tell your leaders exactly what you saw here. Don't leave anything out. Don't try to make it sound less devastating than it was. Their survival may depend on understanding the truth. After she left, Admiral Vextar sat alone with his thoughts. Through the window, he could see human ships, moving through space with the same deadly grace he had witnessed during the battle. In the distance, alien vessels from a dozen different species worked alongside human crews, learning new ways to fight and defend themselves. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and the Zephyrian Empire was no longer the dominant force it had once been. The humans had changed everything in the space of a few minutes, and the changes were still spreading. The Admiral thought about the message he would carry home. His leaders would probably ignore his warnings, dismiss his reports as the ravings of a defeated commander trying to excuse his failure. They would plan new attacks, build larger fleets, and march confidently toward their own destruction. But he would deliver the message anyway, because Captain Chen was right about one thing. The survival of his people might depend on understanding what they were really facing. The humans had taught the galaxy a new lesson, that predators sometimes looked like prey, that the most dangerous enemies were the ones who appeared weak, and that a species that had spent its entire history learning how to fight wars was not one to be underestimated. Admiral Vextar finished his coffee and prepared for the journey home. He had a story to tell, and he wondered if anyone would be wise enough to listen. Outside his window, the human ships continued their patient work, preparing for whatever came next in a galaxy that would never be the same again. The space around the Nexus Gate looked like a graveyard of stars. Thousands of ships floated in the dark void, their hulls glowing red from the heat of constant battle. 3 massive fleets faced each other in a triangle formation, each one waiting for the perfect moment to strike the killing blow. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory. His blue skin showed the stress lines that came from months of endless fighting. As commander of the Zephyrian Empire's 3rd Fleet, he had seen many battles, but nothing like this. The war for the Nexus Gate had been going on for over 4 months now, and nobody was winning. Sir, the Korthak are moving their bioships into attack formation, reported his tactical officer. The young Zephyrian's voice shook slightly. Even trained soldiers were starting to crack under the pressure. Vexatar looked at the main screen. The Korthak Collective's ships looked more like giant sea creatures than spacecraft. Their hulls were made of living tissue that could heal itself and adapt to different weapons. When you shot at them, they learned how to resist your guns. It made them very hard to kill. What about the Valdris? Vextar asked. Still holding position, but their battle groups are spreading out. They might be preparing for another charge. The Valdris Republic was different from both the Zephyrians and the Korthak. Where the Zephyrians used energy weapons and advanced technology and the Korthak used living ships and biological weapons, the Valdris believed in raw power. Their ships were covered in armor thicker than building walls. Their weapons fired solid metal slugs the size of small houses at speeds that could crack planets. Vextar had been fighting this war since it started. The Nexus Gate was the most important piece of space in this part of the galaxy. It was a natural formation that let ships travel instantly between 7 different star systems. Whoever controlled it controlled trade, military movement, and the fate of billions of people. The Zephyrian Empire needed the gate to connect their outer colonies. Without it, their empire would split apart. The Korthak Collective wanted it to spread their hive mind to new worlds. The Valdris Republic saw it as the key to expanding their warrior culture across the stars. None of them could afford to lose. None of them could win. Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Thexis, the communications officer announced. Admiral Thexis commanded the Second Fleet. He was older than Vextar and had fought in more wars than most people could count. His face appeared on the screen, looking tired and angry. "Vextar, we need to end this today," Thexis said without greeting. "My ships are down to 60% strength. The Korthak are adapting faster than we can modify our weapons. And the, Valdris just brought in fresh reinforcements." Vextar nodded. He had seen the new Valdris ships arrive 2 days ago. Massive dreadnoughts that could punch holes through moon-sized asteroids. "What do you suggest?" "Combined assault. Hit them, with everything at once. If we coordinate our attack patterns, we might be able to overwhelm both fleets before they can respond." It was a desperate plan, a final gamble that would either win the war or destroy what was left of the Zephyrian fleet. But Vextar could see no other choice. His own fleet had started with 300 ships. Now he had less than 200, still capable of fighting. "Agreed," Vextar said. "Begin coordination protocols." Across the void, similar conversations were happening on the other fleets. Admiral Hive Mind Cluster 7 of the Korthak was communicating through biological neural links with its sub-commanders. The Korthak did not speak like other species. Instead, they shared thoughts and emotions directly. Right now, those thoughts were filled with hunger and desperation. The collective had lost many ships, but their real problem was different. Each Korthak ship was part of a larger organism. When ships died, the collective felt their pain. The hive mind was becoming unstable from all the death. They needed to win soon, or the psychological damage might tear their unity apart. General Korath of the Valdris Republic faced his own problems. The Valdris valued honor above all else. Running from a fight was worse than death. But even they were starting to question whether this battle could be won. His warriors were brave, but bravery alone could not overcome the advanced shields of the Zephyrians or the adaptive biology of the Korthak. "General, the other fleets are moving," reported his sensor operator. "Energy signatures suggest they are preparing for a major assault." Korath's hand moved to the hilt of his ceremonial sword. Even in space battles, Valdris officers carried blades as symbols of their warrior heritage. "Then we will give them the fight they want. All ships, prepare for final engagement. Today, we either claim victory or die with honor." The three fleets began moving toward each other like massive predators circling for the kill. Zephyrian ships charged their energy weapons until their hulls glowed like small suns. Korthak bioships extended tentacles and weapon pods that pulsed with toxic life. Valdris vessels locked their targeting systems and prepared to fire railguns that could punch through planetary cores. The space between the fleets filled with energy as sensors swept back and forth. Everyone knew this would be the last battle. After months of fighting, someone would finally win, or everyone would die trying. Admiral Vextar watched the tactical display as his ships moved into attack formation. Red dots for enemies, blue dots for allies, and yellow warnings showing areas of heavy radiation from previous battles. The Nexus Gate itself hung in the center of it all, a swirling tunnel of energy that led to other stars. "All ships report. Ready for combat," his tactical officer announced. "Korthak bioships are releasing attack spores," came another report. "Valdris dreadnoughts have locked onto our position," added a third voice. Vexatar took a deep breath. In a few minutes, this would all be over. Either the Zephyrian Empire would control the most important piece of space in the sector, or there would be no empire left to control anything. "Begin final assault," he ordered. The three fleets rushed toward each other like colliding storms. Energy weapons began charging, bioweapons started growing, kinetic cannons prepared to fire. In the dark void around the Nexus Gate, the biggest space battle in recent history was about to reach its bloody conclusion. None of them knew that someone else was watching, someone who would change everything in ways they could never imagine. The warning came from the edge of the battle zone where nobody was looking. Deep space sensors, designed to watch for enemy reinforcements, suddenly detected something impossible. A single ship had appeared out of hyperspace where nothing should have been able to survive the intense radiation from the ongoing battle. Lieutenant Zaxxon stared at his sensor screen in confusion. He was a young Zephyrian officer assigned to watch the outer perimeter while the main fleets prepared for their final assault. His job was usually boring. Today, it became the most important position in the entire war. "Sir," he called to his commanding officer, "I have an unknown contact at grid reference 77 Delta." Commander Tylex walked over to look at the readings. His experienced eyes scanned the data twice before he believed what he was seeing. "That cannot be correct. Run a full diagnostic on your sensors." Zaxxon's fingers moved quickly over his controls. He checked every system, ran every test he could think of. The readings stayed the same. "Sir, diagnostics show all systems operating normally. There is definitely a ship out there." Tylex frowned. During a major battle like this, all ships were accounted for. The three fleets had been watching each other for months. Everyone knew exactly where everyone else was positioned. A new ship appearing meant either reinforcements or a completely unknown player. "What type of vessel?" Tylex asked. "Unknown, sir. The computer cannot match it to any ship in our database. Size appears to be frigate class, approximately 400 meters long. But, sir, the readings are very strange." "Strange how?" Zaxxon looked uncomfortable. "The hull material is not reflecting our sensor beams properly. It seems to be absorbing them instead, and I cannot detect any energy signature that matches known propulsion systems." Across the battlefield, similar conversations were happening. On the other fleets, the Korthak Collective's biosensors had also detected the strange newcomer. But where Zephyrian technology relied on energy and electronics, Korthak systems used living organisms to sense their environment. HiveMind Cluster 7 received the report through a direct neural link from one of its sensor drones. The information came as images and feelings rather than words. The drone showed confusion and fear. It had never encountered anything like this ship before. The Valdris Republic detected the vessel third, but their reaction was the most direct. General Korath received the report and immediately assumed it was an enemy trick. "Cloaking device failure," he announced to his bridge crew. "One of our enemies has revealed themselves too early. All weapons target the unknown vessel." But his weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, the ship does not match any known Zephyrian or Korthak design. It appears to be something else." Korath looked at the tactical display. The ship was small compared to the massive dreadnoughts in his fleet. It appeared to be moving slowly toward the center of the battle formation. More importantly, it seemed to be ignoring the radiation and energy fields that would have fried most smaller vessels. "Origin unknown?" Korath asked. "Yes, sir. Database shows no matches." On the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Glory, Admiral Vextar was receiving his own reports about the mysterious newcomer. His tactical officer had tried every scan he could think of, but the results made no sense. "Sir, the vessel appears to be constructed of unknown materials. Its power source does not match any known technology. And, sir," the officer paused. "Continue. It is transmitting on all frequencies." Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. During a battle, communication between enemy fleets was rare and usually meant surrender or desperate negotiations. "Put it through." The main screen flickered and filled with static. Then a voice came through, speaking in heavily accented galactic standard. The pronunciation was strange, like someone who had learned the language from books rather than conversation. "Unknown vessels. You are ordered to cease hostilities immediately. Withdraw to minimum safe distance or face consequences." The bridge of the Eternal Glory fell silent. Every officer stared at the screen in amazement. Someone was ordering them. to stop fighting. A single small ship was commanding 3 of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy to withdraw. Admiral Vextar almost laughed, then he almost got angry. Finally, he just felt confused. Communications. Open a channel to the unknown vessel. Channel open, sir. Unknown ship. This is Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire 3rd Fleet. You are interfering in a military operation. Identify yourself immediately and withdraw from this combat zone. The response came quickly. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Prometheus. You have been warned to cease hostilities. This is your only warning. Terran? Vextar looked at his intelligence officer. What do we know about Terrans? The intelligence officer checked his database. Sir, Terrans are also known as humans. They are from a planet called Earth in an outer system. Our records show they achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 100 years ago, but they have remained isolated in their home system. They are considered a minor species with primitive technology. Vextar looked back at the screen. The unknown ship, the human ship, was still moving toward the center of the battle formation. It showed no signs of fear or hesitation, despite being vastly outnumbered. Captain Chen, Vextar said, using the human's strange name. You are one small ship facing 3 major fleets. We appreciate your concern, but this matter does not involve your species. Please withdraw immediately. The human's response surprised him. Admiral, this matter involves every species in the galaxy. Wars like this spread. They consume resources, destroy lives, and destabilize entire sectors. We have been watching, and we have decided that enough is enough. On the Korthak command ship, Hive Mind Cluster 7 was trying to understand what was happening. The collective shared thoughts and emotions instantly, but humans were individuals. The hive mind found it difficult to comprehend how a single person could speak for an entire species. The collective tried to contact the human ship directly. Instead of words, they sent images and feelings, a mixture of curiosity, warning, and threat. The response they received shocked them. The humans somehow answered in the same way, sending back images of their own. But these images showed things the collective had never seen before. General Korath of the Valdris Republic was losing patience. His warriors were ready for battle, and this interruption was insulting. All ships, the unknown vessel is clearly some kind of trick by our enemies. Destroy it immediately. But before his weapons could fire, something unexpected happened. The human ship began broadcasting on frequencies that reached all 3 fleets simultaneously. This is your final warning, Captain Chen's voice said calmly. Withdraw now, or we will be forced to take action. You have 30 seconds to begin. Retreat procedures. Admiral Vextar stared at the tactical display. The human ship was alone. 1 vessel against thousands. Yet something about the captain's voice made him hesitate. There was no fear, no uncertainty, just calm confidence, as if she knew something the rest of them did not. Captain Chen, Vextar said slowly, what exactly do you think 1 ship can do against 3 full battle fleets? The human's answer chilled him to the bone. Admiral, Captain Chen replied, you are about to find out exactly what humans can do when we decide a war needs to end. The 30 seconds felt like 30 hours. On the bridge of the Eternal Glory, Admiral Vextar watched his tactical display as the human ship continued moving toward the center of the battle formation. The vessel moved with perfect steadiness, ignoring the massive weapons pointed at it from 3 different directions. Sir, his weapons officer said quietly, should we target the intruder? Vextar hesitated. Something about this situation felt wrong. The human captain had spoken with complete confidence, as if she knew something that 3 galactic powers did not. But logic said that 1 small ship could not threaten thousands of warships. Sir? The weapons officer asked again. Before Vextar could answer, General Korath made the decision for everyone. The Valdris Republic had no patience for delays or diplomacy. Their massive dreadnought Honor's Edge turned its primary weapons toward the human vessel. "All ships, fire at will," Korath commanded. "Destroy the intruder." The first shot came from a Valdris railgun. A metal slug the size of a ground vehicle launched at nearly the speed of light. It should have turned the human ship into expanding gas and debris. Instead, something impossible happened. The slug simply stopped. Not bounced off, not deflected, just stopped in space, as if it had hit an invisible wall. The kinetic energy. That should have destroyed a city block disappeared without any visible effect. "What in the void was that?" Korath demanded. His weapons officer stared at his instruments in confusion. "Sir, the projectile encountered some kind of barrier. Our sensors show no energy field, no physical obstruction. The round just ceased to exist." Admiral Thexus of the Zephyrian Second Fleet saw the Valdris attack fail and decided to try a different approach. "All ships, target the unknown vessel with antimatter torpedoes, full spread." Dozens of antimatter warheads streaked toward the human ship. Each one carried enough destructive power to crack a small moon. They moved faster than the Valdris railgun slugs and used different physics entirely. Surely nothing could stop them all. The torpedoes reached the human ship and detonated in brilliant flashes of pure energy. For a moment, the entire battlefield was lit up like a small sun. When the light faded, everyone expected to see empty space where the intruder had been. Instead, the human ship was exactly where it had been before. Not damaged, not even scratched. The antimatter explosions had simply washed over it like water over a stone. "Impossible," Admiral Thexus whispered. Hive Mind Cluster 7 of the Korthak Collective felt waves of confusion and fear from its sub-commanders. The Collective decided to try their own approach. Bioweapons were different from energy weapons or kinetic projectiles. They were alive, able to adapt and find weaknesses that technology might miss. The Korthak ships released clouds of attack spores, microscopic, organisms designed to eat through any known hull material. They could adapt to different defenses in real time, learning how to overcome obstacles as they encountered them. Nothing biological could resist them. The spores reached the human ship and simply died, not destroyed by weapons or energy fields. They just stopped living. Billions of microscopic warriors fell silent in an instant, as if something had simply turned off the spark of life inside them. The three fleet commanders stared at their displays in growing horror. Each had used their most powerful weapons, their most advanced technology. None of it had even slowed the human vessel down. Then Captain Chen's voice came over the communication system again. She sounded completely calm, as if being shot at by 3 galactic powers was a normal part of her day. "I gave you 30 seconds to withdraw," she said. "That time is up. Since you have chosen to open fire, I will now demonstrate why humanity is no longer confined to our home system." Admiral Vexitar felt his blood turn cold. "Captain Chen, please reconsider. We are willing to negotiate." "The time for negotiation ended when you fired the first shot," the human replied. "You have forced this situation. Now you will learn why that was a mistake." The human ship began to change. Its hull, which had been absorbing sensor beams, suddenly became completely invisible to every detection system in all 3 fleets. The vessel disappeared from visual, radar, thermal, and gravitational sensors simultaneously. "Where did it go?" demanded General Korath. "Unknown, sir," his sensor operator replied with a shaking voice. "All tracking lost." Then something happened that would be remembered in galactic history books for centuries to come. The Zephyrian dreadnought's storm of victory suddenly began to compress. Not crushed by external force, the ship itself was folding inward, as if space around it was contracting. The massive vessel, over 2 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to level continents, crumpled like paper in the hands of a giant. Its hull plates folded into impossible angles. Its energy shields flickered and died. In less than 10 seconds, One of the most powerful warships in the Zephyrian fleet had been reduced to a ball of twisted metal barely 50 meters across. "Report!" Admiral Vex's Tar shouted. "What happened to the Storm of Victory?" "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied in a voice filled with terror. "Sensors show localized gravitational distortion, but the source is... the readings make no sense." Before anyone could respond, a Korthak biocruiser began experiencing the same effect. The living ship screamed across bioneural links as its organic hull twisted and compressed. The collective felt every moment of agony as one of their largest vessels was crushed into a dense sphere of what had once been living tissue. "Gravitational weapon," Admiral Thexus realized. "They are manipulating space-time itself." A Valdris battleship was next. The proud vessel, with armor thick enough to withstand planetary bombardment, simply folded in on itself like origami. Its crew had no time to scream, no time to even understand what was happening. Captain Chen's voice filled the communication channels of all three fleets. "I am targeting your flagships now. You have 10 seconds to order full retreat, or every command vessel in this battle zone will be destroyed." General Korath gripped his ceremonial sword until his knuckles turned white. The Valdris did not retreat. They did not surrender. But they also had never faced an enemy who could crush dreadnoughts like empty cans. "All ships," he said through gritted teeth, "emergency withdrawal. Fall back to minimum safe distance." Admiral Thexus was already giving similar orders. His fleet began turning away from the battle zone as fast as their engines could manage. The Zephyrian Empire's most advanced warships fled like frightened children. Hive Mind Cluster 7 felt the overwhelming terror of its sub-commanders and made the only logical choice. The collective's bioships began retreating, their living hulls pulsing with fear. In less than 2 minutes, 3 of the galaxy's most powerful fleets were running away from a single small vessel that they could not even see. The human ship became visible again, appearing exactly where it had been before. Captain Chen opened communication channels to all 3 retreating fleets. "This engagement is over," she announced. "Any ship that stops retreating or attempts to resume hostilities will be destroyed immediately. You have 5 minutes to clear the combat zone." The 3 fleets that had been locked in deadly combat for months were now united in one goal: getting as far away from the human ship as possible. Centuries of military tradition, honor codes, and tactical doctrine meant nothing in the face of technology that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. As the last ships disappeared into hyperspace, Captain Chen transmitted one final message. This time, it was broadcast on emergency frequencies that would reach every inhabited system in the sector. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Prometheus. The battle for the Nexus Gate is over. This system is now under human protection. Any faction that resumes hostilities in this sector will face the full response of the Terran Defense Force." The communication ended, leaving the Nexus Gate under the protection of a species that most of the galaxy had never heard of. In one afternoon, humanity had announced itself to the galactic community in the most dramatic way possible. They had ended a war that 3 major powers could not resolve, and they had done it without killing a single person, just 3 ships that had refused to listen to reason. The emergency session of the Galactic Council took place 3 days after the incident at the Nexus Gate. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime, their voices creating a buzz of conversation. That sounded like a disturbed hive. Ambassador Keltos of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the central podium, his blue skin pale with exhaustion. He had not slept since receiving Admiral Vextar's report. Behind him, massive screens showed recordings from the battle that had shocked the entire galaxy. "Fellow representatives," Keltos began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "we face a situation unlike anything in galactic history. A previously unknown species has demonstrated technology that makes our most advanced weapons appear primitive." The assembly hall erupted in nervous chatter. Everyone had heard the reports, but seeing the actual footage was different. The screens showed the human ship appearing from nowhere, withstanding attacks that should have destroyed it, and then crushing massive warships with invisible forces. Representative Thyron of the Alterian Federation raised her arm to speak. Ambassador Keltos, our intelligence services have only limited information about these humans. Can you tell us what your military has learned? Keltos activated his datapad and read from Admiral Vexitar's official report. The humans, also known as Terrans, originate from a planet called Earth in the Outer Rim territories. Our records show they achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 100 years ago. Until now, they have remained isolated in their home system. 100 years? Interrupted Senator Vaxis of the Triangulum Republic. That makes them newcomers to space travel. How could they have developed such advanced technology so quickly? That is what we are trying to understand, Keltos replied. Our scientists are reviewing all available data, but their technology appears to operate on principles we do not recognize. Elder Morpheus of the Drakmari hierarchy spoke in his ancient, gravelly voice. In my 700 years of life, I have seen many technological advances. Energy weapons, biomanipulation, quantum engineering. But what these humans demonstrated was not advanced technology. It was manipulation of fundamental forces that govern reality itself. The hall fell silent. Elder Morpheus was one of the oldest and wisest beings in the galaxy. If he was concerned, everyone should be worried. Ambassador Nexus of the Void Runners suddenly stood up. The Void Runners were traders and explorers who traveled to the farthest reaches of known space. If anyone had information about humans, it would be them. I request permission to share information that may be relevant, Nexus announced. Permission granted, replied the council speaker. Nexus activated a holographic display that showed star charts and trade routes. My people have attempted to establish contact with the human home system on several occasions over the past 50 years. Each time our ships were met at the edge of their system by vessels we assumed were patrol craft. What kind of vessels? Asked Ambassador Keltos. Small ships, similar in size to the one that appeared at the Nexus Gate. They were polite, but firm. They thanked us for our interest in trade, but explained that humanity was not ready for galactic commerce. They escorted our ships to the edge of their system and asked us not to return. Did these patrol ships demonstrate any unusual capabilities? Elder Morpheus inquired. Nexus hesitated. We thought they were just being cautious. But looking back, our most advanced sensors could barely detect them. They moved without any visible propulsion system. And when our ship's engines experienced technical problems near their system boundary, the human ships somehow repaired them instantly without ever coming aboard. A chill ran through the assembly hall. The humans had been watching the galaxy for decades, demonstrating advanced technology, while pretending to be simple patrol craft. Representative Korvek of the Hegemony spoke up. If the humans have been observing us, what do they want? Why reveal themselves now? Before anyone could answer, the main communication system activated. The voice that came through the speakers was now familiar to everyone in the galaxy, Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Prometheus. Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council, Captain Chen began, I understand you are discussing recent events at the Nexus Gate. With your permission, I would like to address your assembly. The council speaker looked around the hall, nervously. Captain Chen, this is a closed session of the Galactic Council. Your species is not yet a member of our organization. I understand, Captain Chen replied calmly. However, I believe our conversation will benefit everyone involved. I am currently in orbit around Nexus Prime. I can be in your assembly hall in 20 minutes if you wish to meet face-to-face. The assembly hall erupted in shocked voices. The human ship was here, at the capital world of galactic civilization, and nobody had detected it arriving. Elder Morpheus raised his arm for silence. Captain Chen, how long have you been in our system? I arrived shortly after your emergency session began, she replied. "I wanted to give you time to discuss the situation before offering humanity's perspective." Ambassador Keltos felt his legs grow weak. The human had been listening to their entire conversation. "Captain, our planetary defense systems detected no incoming ships." "Your defense systems are impressive," Captain Chen said politely, "but they are designed to detect conventional spacecraft. Our technology operates differently." The council speaker made a decision that would change galactic history. "Captain Chen, the Galactic Council formally invites you to address our assembly. We will prepare a reception area immediately." "Thank you. I will arrive in 15 minutes. The communication ended, leaving the assembly hall in chaos. Security officers scrambled to prepare for the arrival of someone who could apparently bypass every defense system in the galaxy. Diplomats checked their translation devices and reviewed first contact protocols that had not been used in centuries. Exactly 15 minutes later, the main doors of the assembly hall opened. Captain Sarah Chen walked in, and every representative got their first look at a human being. She was smaller than most species in the hall, standing only about 1.7 meters tall. Her skin was darker than Zephyrian blue, but lighter than Drakmari gray. Her hair was black and pulled back in a simple style. She wore a uniform that looked functional rather than decorative. What surprised everyone was how normal she appeared. After witnessing the devastating power of human technology, they had expected something more impressive. Instead, Captain Chen looked like she could be anyone's neighbor. "Honorable representatives," Captain Chen said as she approached the central podium, "thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. I understand you have questions about humanity and our recent actions." Elder Morpheus leaned forward in his seat. "Captain Chen, your species has demonstrated technology that appears to violate known physical laws. How is this possible?" Captain Chen smiled, and somehow that expression was more unsettling than any weapon. "Elder Morpheus, we have not violated any physical laws. We have simply learned to work with forces that others have not yet discovered. Your species are accomplished engineers and scientists. Given time, you could develop similar capabilities." "How much time?" asked Representative Theron. "For most species? Perhaps 1,000 years, maybe 2,000. It depends on how quickly you move beyond thinking of technology as tools and start thinking of it as partnerships with the universe itself." Ambassador Keltos felt a chill run down his spine. "Partnerships with the universe? The universe wants to be understood," Captain Chen explained simply. "When you fight against natural forces, progress is slow and difficult. When you work with them, when you ask rather than demand, amazing things become possible." Senator Vaxis stood up abruptly. "Captain Chen, your ship destroyed 3 of our most powerful warships with apparent ease. Are you threatening the galaxy?" For the first time, Captain Chen's expression became serious. "Senator, I did not destroy those ships to threaten anyone. I destroyed them to save lives. If that battle had continued, hundreds of thousands of beings would have died. 3 ships were sacrificed to prevent a much greater tragedy." "But you could destroy entire fleets if you wanted to?" pressed Senator Vaxis. Captain Chen looked directly at him, and her eyes held depths that seemed much older than her apparent age. "Senator, humanity could do many things. We could conquer worlds, enslave species, or impose our will on the galaxy. We choose not to do these things because we have learned that true strength comes from helping others become stronger." "Then what do you want?" Elder Morpheus asked quietly. Captain Chen's smile returned, warm and genuine. "We want peace, Elder. We want species to resolve their differences through dialogue rather than warfare. We want the galaxy to become a place where children of all species can grow up safely, and we want to share what we have learned with those who are ready to listen." The assembly hall was completely silent. Every representative was trying to understand what they had just heard. The most powerful military force in the galaxy wanted nothing more than peace. "How do we know we can trust you?" Ambassador Keltos asked. Captain Chen's answer would be quoted in history books for millennia to come. "Ambassador, trust is not something that can be demanded or proven." 1 year after the incident at the Nexus Gate, the galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The battle that had lasted for months was now remembered as the Heartbeat War, because that was how long it took one human ship to end what 3 galactic powers could not resolve. Ambassador Keltos stood in his office on Nexus Prime, looking out at the space traffic around the gate. Ships from dozens of species moved peacefully through the hyperspace junction that had once been the site of the greatest battle in recent memory. Zephyrian cargo vessels shared shipping lanes with Korthak biotransports and Valdris merchant cruisers. The 3 species that had fought so desperately for control of the gate now managed it together under human supervision. It was not the outcome anyone had expected, but it worked better than anyone had hoped. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Keltos activated his communication system and saw the familiar face of Captain Sarah Chen. Over the past year, they had spoken many times as humanity slowly integrated into galactic civilization. "Ambassador Keltos," Captain Chen said with her usual warm smile, "I hope I am not interrupting anything important." "Not at all, Captain. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to give you advance notice that we are expanding our protection zone. 3 more systems have requested human peacekeeping assistance after territorial disputes became violent." Keltos nodded. This was how humanity operated. They did not conquer or demand tribute. Instead, they responded to requests for help from species who could not resolve their conflicts peacefully. The results spoke for themselves. "Which systems?" Keltos asked. "The Alterian-Draxan border dispute in the Kepler sector, the resource conflict between the Mining Guild and the Farmers Collective in the Vega system, and the religious war in the Proxima cluster." Keltos checked his files. All 3 conflicts had been going on for years with no resolution in sight. Traditional diplomacy had failed, and military intervention by galactic powers had only made things worse. "How do you plan to approach these situations?" he asked. Captain Chen's expression became thoughtful. "The same way we always do. We will listen to all sides, understand what each group really needs, and help them find solutions that work for everyone. Violence ends when people feel heard and respected. And if they refuse to cooperate, then we make it clear that violence is no longer an option. Most beings are reasonable when they know that fighting will not achieve their goals." Keltos had seen this approach work dozens of times over the past year. Human ships would arrive at conflict zones and simply make it impossible for anyone to continue fighting. Their technology could disable weapons without destroying ships, stop armies without killing soldiers, and neutralize threats without creating new enemies. But more importantly, humans seemed to understand what each species actually wanted beneath their stated demands. They found solutions that addressed root causes rather than just symptoms. "Captain, I have a question that many council members have been discussing," Keltos said carefully. "Please ask. How long will humanity continue this role? Peacekeeping across the galaxy must be exhausting for your people." Captain Chen's smile became sad. "Ambassador, we hope that someday our peacekeeping role will no longer be necessary. Our goal is to help other species develop their own methods for resolving conflicts peacefully. We want to work ourselves out of a job." "You really do not want to rule the galaxy?" "Rule it?" Captain Chen laughed. "Ambassador, ruling the galaxy would be a terrible job. Too much paperwork, too many meetings, and far too much responsibility. We prefer to help others solve their own problems." Before Keltos could respond, his communication system chimed again. This time it was a priority message from the Drakmari hierarchy. Elder Morpheus appeared on screen, his ancient face showing excitement that Keltos had never seen before. Ambassador Keltos, Elder Morpheus said. Is Captain Chen available? I have news that she will want to hear immediately. I am here, Elder, Captain Chen replied. What has happened? Captain, our scientists have achieved a breakthrough in gravitational manipulation based on principles your people shared with us. We have successfully created a small gravity field in our laboratory. Captain Chen's face lit up with genuine joy. Elder, that is wonderful news. How do you feel about the achievement? It is remarkable. For the first time in centuries, our scientists are excited about discovery rather than worried about weapons applications. Your people's approach to science as partnership rather than domination has opened new ways of thinking. Keltos watched this exchange with growing understanding. Humans did not hoard their technology or use it to maintain superiority. Instead, they shared knowledge freely with species that showed they could use it responsibly. Elder, Captain Chen said, would you like to visit our research station in the Sol system? Our scientists would love to collaborate with yours on gravitational research. That would be an honor, Captain. When would be convenient? Anytime you wish. I will arrange transportation that will be comfortable for your biology. After Elder Morpheus signed off, Keltos stared at Captain Chen in amazement. You are inviting him to visit your home system? I thought humans preferred to keep Earth isolated. We kept Earth isolated while we were learning about the galaxy and deciding how to reveal ourselves, Captain Chen explained. Now that we are working together, secrecy serves no purpose. Besides, isolation breeds fear and misunderstanding. Openness creates friendship. Over the past year, a few select representatives from various species had visited the human home system, all returned with the same message. Humanity possessed technology that seemed like magic, but they lived simple lives focused on art, learning, and family relationships. Captain, may I ask a personal question? Keltos said. Of course. What was humanity like before you developed this advanced technology? Were you always so peaceful? Captain Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of painful history. Ambassador, humans have not always been peaceful. We fought terrible wars among ourselves for thousands of years. We nearly destroyed our own planet several times through violence and environmental damage. We know the cost of conflict because we have paid it ourselves. What changed? We learned that our greatest enemy was not other humans, but our own fear and ignorance. Once we began working together instead of against each other, we discovered that the universe was far more amazing than any war could ever be. We learned to be curious rather than afraid, to explore rather than conquer. Keltos felt a strange sensation. Something he realized was hope. Do you think other species can learn the same lessons? I know they can, Captain Chen said with absolute confidence. We see it happening already. Species that were enemies last year are now trading partners. Military research budgets are being redirected to exploration and education. Children across the galaxy are growing up believing that cooperation is normal and war is an ancient mistake. A communication alert interrupted their conversation. This time it was General Korath of the Valdris Republic. The proud warrior looked older than when Keltos had last seen him, but also somehow more at peace. Captain Chen, Korath said with formal respect, I wish to report that the Valdris youth training programs have been successfully converted from military preparation to engineering education. Our young people are now learning to build rather than destroy. General, that is one of the best things I have heard all year, Captain Chen replied warmly. How are the young people responding to the change? Better than expected. It seems that our youth were always interested in creation and exploration. We simply never gave them alternatives to military service. Now they are designing new ships, developing better life support systems, and even writing poetry. Poetry? Keltos asked in surprise. Warrior poetry, Korath explained with what might have been embarrassment. Epic poems about the conquest of ignorance rather than the conquest of enemies. It is surprisingly moving. After Korath signed off, Captain Chen turned back to Keltos with sparkling eyes. This is why we revealed ourselves, Ambassador. Not to show our strength, but to help others discover their own potential. Captain, I have one final question. What does the future hold? Where do you see the galaxy in 50 years? Captain Chen looked out through the office window at the peaceful space traffic around the Nexus Gate. Ships from dozens of species moved together in harmony, carrying goods, passengers, and ideas between the stars. In 50 years, Ambassador, I see a galaxy where children learn about war only in history classes, where species share knowledge freely because they trust each other, where exploration and discovery are more exciting than conquest and control, where every species contributes their unique gifts to make the galaxy better for everyone. She paused and smiled. And most importantly, I see a galaxy where humanity is no longer needed as peacekeepers because everyone has learned to keep peace themselves. Keltos felt his heart beating faster with hope and excitement. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, he could imagine a future without constant conflict and fear. Captain Chen, he said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to thank humanity for showing us that another way is possible.